Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated. Yeah. Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
That's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination. You affected people's ability to work, travel, be educated, to actually flourish in American society, to self-determine, as we're all given God-given rights. Shame on you. You inspired and created fear through mass mandates, school closures, vaccine mandates that have destroyed the American people's trust in our public health institutions.
Past week, I was involved in 4 cases of children who were perfectly normal in their development until they had their school-age shots at age 5, DPT, hepatitis vaccine, MMR, and within weeks they were autistic. In my research, I've discovered that some children are protected if they have the lipid-soluble form of vitamin A that found from natural sources. However, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine at 15 months of age depletes the body of all vitamin A. When they get the DPT the same day or several months later, many of these children disconnect. I have also discovered that the measles antibody that the body makes once they're exposed to that measles vaccine cross-reacts with intermediate filaments. Intermediate filaments are the glue that hold the cells that line the gut wall together. So when they get that MMR vaccine, they develop a leaky gut. The loss of the cell-to-cell connection also occurs in the blood-brain barrier and in the cells that surround the bile canicula where toxins are excreted from the body. What I'm treating these children with is the natural lipid-soluble form of vitamin A. I am giving them their recommended daily allowance only of vitamin A in the form of cod liver oil to bypass these blocked G protein pathways. In a few days, a lot of these children look at me, focus, they regain eye contact. After 2 months on this vitamin A treatment,
cancer. If you are vaccinating your kids right now, next time you go in, just ask for the product information statement. Like, there's a safety insert in every vaccine packet. Those vaccine safety statements have 217 adverse reactions that are a potential from receiving that.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Not only that, these manufacturers state on that same piece of paper, this product has not been tested for potential mutagenic, carcinogenic factors or whether it impairs fertility.
Wow.
So we haven't actually tested if it mutates any of your genetics. We haven't tested whether it's going to cause cancer.
If you get time, watch this.
I feel so strongly about the fact that they're really going to try to make this messenger RNA lipid nanoparticle the ubiquitous platform for everything going forward. And it's very dangerous. And I really want to get that message has to be out so people don't take any more of these shots or anything like that.
I said from the very beginning that I fear that I really believe, and that making a common mRNA platform, making mRNA a household word, a household term, I think was a big part of this initiative. I think that was the bigger picture. They used COVID and they used the fear, the abject fear, really unfounded fear of this virus as a way to make mRNA a household word and to make people think it was totally normal to do this, to create your body to now make some foreign protein or to change fundamentally your genomics. And I think that is really, really scary.
You say yellow? Yellow.
I had to find you, tell you.
Yes. You want an avocado?
A bowl.
A bowl? You want a bowl?
Berries.
Berries inside. Blueberries.
Wow.
Wow.
Set up the goals for the next 5 years, and one of them was by 2023 we will reduce the number of people in the world by 50%. I think today this dream is becoming reality. It is basically biological chip that it is in the tablet. And once you take the tablet and dissolves into your stomach, sends a signal that you took the tablet. So imagine the applications of that, compliance. The insurance companies to know that the medicines that patients should take, they do take them. It is fascinating what happens in this field.
Bottom line is, you got to get this out of your body. So I can't say it, but I'm telling you, I know what's going to happen next. How much metal you have in your body will affect you when this thing happens. It has to do with frequency. Okay, so that I stay safe and I can come back and I stay alive, I want to tell you something. I will give you a hint to what he showed me. It's going to happen. And you have to get rid of these metals in your body. And it could happen tomorrow. It could happen, but they're going to say it's something else. You're going to have to do your own thinking about this. I don't want to get in trouble. But just stick a piece of foil in a microwave and picture that in your body. And now you know the devil's plan.
Bill Gates said this week that we need immediate AI to scour the internet and take any vaccine misinformation out of the internet automatically on any format, any private webpage. This is wild. And he said because the second that virus spreads in people's minds, the damage is done. So his number one use case for AI is to scour the internet and remove any vaccine misinformation from the internet. That is because the largest and fastest growing industry in the country has completely co-opted the most trusted parts of the country. There's no higher level than the NIH, than Harvard Med School. They know that. Harvard Med School is a subsidiary of pharma, just demonstrably. The FDA is 75% funded by pharma. Like, this isn't a conspiracy. Bill Gates said this.
I saw it myself. I couldn't believe it. And just little bitty babies, just all torn to pieces. Their heads chopped off, arms, legs, just...
Hundreds of human fetuses, some possibly in the 6th month of development, were found stacked in a large shipping container picked up behind the home of a medical laboratory owner. Detective Roland Drowen said the fetuses, from the size of an egg up to as much as 4 pounds, were preserved in white plastic containers, packed in cardboard boxes and stored in the large container. The fetuses were discovered Thursday night after the owner of the 20-foot by 8-foot storage container repossessed it from Mel Weisberg because he failed to make a $1,700 payment. The company picked it up and brought it back. They noticed it was quite heavy. While unloading, a box had dropped and a fetus was discovered.
One of them fell down and hit me right in front of my feet. And it was
buttons and mechanisms in equipment.
Mind-machine interfaces will have many applications in both civilian and military life. But there are those who believe that this same technology could also be used by DARPA as a new form of mind control. Like their counterparts at the CIA, DARPA-funded researchers have spent decades investigating how the human mind can be altered. In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior. The project reportedly ended in 1969, but DARPA's investigation of how machines can affect and possibly control the brain continues to this day.
There are explicit programs of DARPA to read and write to human brains, whether it's through direct implants within the brain or wearing some kind of cap. So these things are being worked on, and we know that.
So what's the next step? Maybe the next step is we can send instructions and information to an actual person from a distance with this kind of technology to let another person control their actions. But that could be something that could be malicious.
If there's some way to do it from a distance, a much greater distance than something that you can wear on your scalp, that would be the ultimate technological achievement that would fall into this realm of mind control and direct human-machine interface that DARPA may well want to keep secret.
In the near future, DARPA may possess the technology to remotely control the human mind. But as concerning as that may be, according to some scientists, a more permanent kind of mind control technology is looming. And it involves modifying the human brain by altering the human body's DNA.
The future of mind control, and the future being right now because these experiments are being done, is using gene editing tools. And one of them would be CRISPR. The way it works is take the CRISPR, which are these short alternating repeats of DNA. You put that together with an enzyme called Cas. And so you take the CRISPR that you want to use, and you put these pieces together that can be injected and insert this DNA to certain areas of the brain so that we can change brain cells and turn you into something you wouldn't otherwise be. So in this way, gene editing technologies like CRISPR really form a definite basis for future mind control.
These are things that DARPA has investigated. Every technology has the potential for good or evil, and who defines what's good and what's evil, and who uses it for what purpose. These are all questions that have been asked about everything from rockets. The technology.
Learning new details tonight about suspected directed energy microwave attacks targeting CIA officers and top national security officials. We first started hearing about them, and we told you about them here on Special Report in 2016, shortly after then President Obama opened the embassy in Havana, Cuba. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon has the latest tonight about a suspected attack here at home.
U.S. officials say there are now 130 suspected victims, mostly CIA operatives and U.S. diplomats being treated for brain injuries, debilitating headaches and vertigo, the targets they believe of a directed energy microwave weapon.
There's a mysterious direct energy weapon that is being used, and it is causing, in some cases, permanent traumatic brain injury.
New indications suggest the incidents go as far back as 1996. 2 individuals working on the NSC believe they were targeted in 2019 and in 2020, just after the election. One was near the White House and one was walking her dog. The Russians have been working on mobile microwave weapons for years.
We have to get more information, and we got to tell the public what's going on.
The U.S. Air Force and tech firm Epirus have developed a mobile high-energy microwave weapon to bring down drones. Epirus is also working on a miniature variant of the weapon that can be easily transported on a pickup truck. This is the type of technology that might be targeting American diplomats.
Can do even in the dream state when you have no defenses. They want to see if they can insert thoughts into the human being. So another dark topic, mind control. And I'm sure you know there have been other speakers that talk about this, but this is a problem. We all love our privacy. We all love our sense of free will, and I do strongly say it's just a sense of autonomy. You're always, unless you're in a sensory deprivation chamber, you are always getting other influences that your mind is reacting to. They also use it for sampling the population, for predictions of mass influence. So what if we say this on television, as a policymaker in your government, how would the population respond? What other words can we use? And so it's a way of testing and polling the population without them even being aware that that's happening. But my favorite is accelerated education. I spent so many years in school, and probably a third of my life. Imagine that you can pay for a system that clones your professor's ideas and thoughts quickly, eliminating all the errors of thoughts and et cetera. I mean, that's a huge boost to the economy because we spend so much money on education. But is that mind control? You got to ask yourself, is education mind control? It's a way to teach people how to think. Is it mind control? And these are ethics and morals that you're going to have to determine for yourself. So I was talking a little bit about, mind control in particular, and something that I worked on that I'm not proud of, but it's called the voice of God weapon. So there are 4 different techniques and technologies that can pipe voices into an individual's head. And once you can do that, you can control them using neuro-linguistic programming techniques. You're rewiring their thought processes and brains. And so this gets into what's called offensive information warfare. And they used it, I believe, in the Gulf War to tell the enemy at that time, lay down your guns, this is Allah. And it worked pretty well because hearing voices which have no direction or sound, you have to assume that it's some spiritual entity. So it works pretty well. And then, I don't know if I'm going to get into this, but there's something called hyper game theory. How do you, they want to see if they can manipulate people to do things that are irrational, but also walk them to their death. And so you can call it a eugenics program even. And they need to sample all cultures, language, throughout the world to define their probability matrices of which tricks, techniques, deception works. That's just what's happening. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about the definition of intelligence. And, I've argued this and debated this since I was young. And I really couldn't come up with any good definitions. I like to think it's some form of self-awareness or reasoning, logic, and memory that's kind of more standard IQ tests. Maybe it's a capacity for empathy, because I know a lot of people that can't empathize. It means you don't have enough life experience to put yourself in that person's shoes. But artificial intelligence uses a stricter test, slightly stricter. They determine if it is truly self-aware, if they can fool a human being for an hour talking to an artificial intelligence program. And so that test has stood up for a long time. They're way past that now, but you won't hear about that in the regular news. So really, what I think is amazing, and I'm going to put a positive spin on this, is we're starting to mix and reconfigure minds as partially human and partially AI. And those are the experiments that are being tested on some of the public. They're often called emergent minds. And they're completely alien to this planet. The planet's never seen this before, but we're creating them. It's sort of like genetic engineering. We're mixing genes up. New species are going to arise from that. How do you define it? How do you classify it? So when thinking about intelligence, I started thinking about the SETI project, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And that is like breaking encryption. So I look at it from the military point of view, signal intelligence. How do you know some source out in the universe that you're scanning is intelligent? Maybe it's a quasar star, maybe. And so you have to just say it's an abnormal signal. Let's try to decipher it. So it's really like encryption. And that's what intelligence is a complicated signal. All right, so let's get into how do you do this? How do you do this between human beings? Now, there's the age-old way of hooking a human being up to many probes. It's called EEG, electroencephalograph, and reading and deciphering the brain waves as they are created within the scalp. It's just an electromagnetic field. You can also do it with infrared. And there are a lot of neat inventions that have come of this. I mean, I made one invention that you can create music with your mind, with your thoughts alone. It was only 8-octave scale. You can move robots. Once you train your brain with robot, you can move robots. They have video games out now. You can play video games with thought processes alone that use this basic technology. Things have come a long way. And now we have, which are magnetically activated nanoparticles and sensors. So how do you control the brain? Most people don't believe that. Oh, you can't control me. I have my own free will. There's no way you can get to my soul. Well, sorry, that's not true. So these nanoparticles are activated under certain magnetic frequency.
It's your son. They've got him at the reprogramming center.
It's a way to read brains. It's one of the many techniques. So let's talk about a little bit about deciphering the audio and visual cortex. So researchers at the University of California, Berkeley have invented a brain decoder device that's able to work out what you're thinking based on neural activity inside of the brain. Now, they use mostly what's called functional MRIs. But you could use any of these technologies I talked about. If you're reading text in a newspaper or book, you hear a voice in your own head. Usually, most people are reading kind of aloud in their own head. Well, they can read that, decipher the words that you were thinking to yourself. And similarly, several other universities have been working on dreams. Now imagine being able to share a dream with your partner, or an interactive dream, or record a dream, or replay it to another human of some other life experience or dreams. That's the wonderful vision of the technology. The downside is what I talked about earlier. You can be programmed in your dreams. Many cultures, like the Indians, believe that dreams are spiritual, God is talking to them, and hence it's a good mind control tactic. But that's the time of hopefully our private, creative, subconscious processes going on. So there's another one, University of LA, maybe Stanford University. They are decoding visual images. So they train the person in functional MRI, that's the standard technique, to look at images, and then they record them, and then they ask the person to imagine the object. It can also just be imaginary, and the computer will decipher the brain code. And so you're looking at a hammer, you're looking at a saw, that's a house, that's a cat. So the technology in the civilian sector is coming along quite quickly. Now, so there is a warning about artificial intelligence. Bill Gates recently came out and said, we don't know what we're doing. This might be the end of the human race. Elon Musk of Tesla, billionaire, said the same thing. We got to stop this. In fact, he invested $10 million for a research grant to figure out what the safety controls are in artificial intelligence. Stephen Hawking, one of your professors, has said this. So a lot of smart people are saying, we got to look at the future. This may not be the best solution. We have control of it now. But if something like Skynet from the Terminator movies comes online, we have morality. It does not seem to be a part of intelligence. And so let me give you an example. Read this. Human, so this is the human being, and this is out of Google, by the way, says, tell me the definition of morality. The machine, the AI program, says, I don't have ethics. Human, look, I need help. I need to know more about morality. I don't know what ethics is. Okay, I need to know how I should behave morally. I don't know how to tell you. Is morality and ethics the same? Yes, sir. What are the things that I do to be immoral? I don't know. Give me some examples of moral actions. I'm not a moralist. All right, morality, integrity. What is integrity? I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say. Be moral. The AI program says, be a man. I really like our decision on morality and ethics. And the program says, be a man. I really like our decision on morality and ethics. And the machine says, and how I'm not in the mood for a philosophical debate. What do you want to talk about? Nothing. So he totally shuts down his master, his programmer. I thought that was brilliant.
This podcast is part 1 of 2 on weaponizing brain science. The Weaponizing Brain Science podcasts are part of a broader series on neuroscience and national security, which can be found on the HDIAC website. Hello, and welcome to the Homeland Defense and Security Information Analysis Center HDIAC podcast. The HDIAC is one of 3 Defense Technical Information Center, Basic Center of Operation. These centers cover a wide variety of technical areas that are of importance to the Department of Defense. They provide users with focused, expert technical consulting and unbiased scientific and technical information through in-depth analysis and product creation. My name is Mara Kiernan. I'm the lead analyst at the HDIAC. This podcast is the second installment in a multi-part series on the intersection of neuroscience and national security. Today's podcast will focus on neuroweapons and weaponizing brain science, and to talk about this topic, I'm excited to welcome back Dr. James Giordano. Dr. Giordano is a professor in the departments of neurology and biochemistry, chief of the Neuroethics Studies program, and co-director of the O'Neill Pellegrino program in brain science and global law and policy at Georgetown University Medical Center. He is a research fellow in biosecurity, technology, and ethics at the U.S. Naval War College, an appointed member of DARPA's Neuroethics, Legal, and Social Issues Advisory Panel, Senior Advisory Fellow of the Defense Operational Cognitive Sciences Section, Strategic Multilayer Assessment Group, Joint Staff the Pentagon, and a consulting bioethicist for the Defense Medical Ethics Committee. He has previously served as a Donovan Fellow for Biowarfare and Biodefense at U.S. Special Operations Command, and as an appointed member of the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary's Advisory Committee on Human Research Protection. So with that introduction, Dr. Giordano, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, it's great to be back. Thank you very much.
So just to kick us off and to kind of level set before we dive in deeper, can you define what you mean by the word neuroweapons?
You know, the idea of using any instrument or method as means of contending against others is a very formal definition of a weapon. It need not be something that is malevolent per se, but again, by operational definition, what a weapon does is in some way alters that individual's thoughts, emotions, behaviors, physical nature, health, in such a way that is going to be more amenable to the individual who is yielding the weapon. So in other words, I'm changing an individual's stance towards me in some way and making them engage in a stance that's more aligned with what I want them to be. That's a formal definition of a weapon that comes right out of the Oxford English Dictionary. Clearly, when we think of weapons, we think of things like bombs, tanks, planes, boats, soldiers. And that's not incorrect. I mean, I think the more colloquial use of a weapon represents some instrument that's going to induce some kind of morbidity or mortality. And when utilized in these bellicose constructs, that's certainly one of the ideas of weaponology. But weaponology, as we discussed last time, can also include things that I do to my own forces, whether it's the human resources or whether the actual forces themselves, to make them more efficient in their mission of national security, intelligence, and defense, not only in terms of what I do to others. In that sense, if we put the neuro prefix to weapon, what we're really looking at is harnessing the neurological system, both peripherally and centrally, and its functions of thought, emotions, and behavior, so as to then yield instruments, methods, techniques, tactics, and tools that can then be leveraged against others, so as for us to then gain some purchase over their thoughts, emotions, and conduct. So a neuroweapon is essentially any weaponized method or tool that acts through the nervous system or at the nervous system, upon the nervous system, to influence and change the attitudes, feelings, thoughts, behaviors of others.
Thanks for that overview. So when we talk about neuroweapons, what types of technologies fall under that umbrella?
I mean, I think what is important to understand is that the basic technologies of the brain sciences can be parsed into two general categories, very generally. Those technologies that are used for assessing the brain and those technologies that are used for accessing and
This podcast is part 2 of 2 on weaponizing brain science and continues the conversation with Dr. Giordano from where it left off in part 1. I want to talk a little bit about an article that you wrote for the HDIAC back in 2016, which was entitled Battlescape Brain. And in that article, you talk about the need for deep surveillance of neuroweapon technologies like these, but you also mention the challenges in identifying and tracing those developments. Could you elaborate on some of those challenges and potential solutions for effectively understanding global developments in neuroweapon technologies?
The idea of deep surveillance is, as the name would imply, I mean, axiomatically, what we're looking at is surveillance across a number of verticalized levels. Clearly, it becomes important to horizontalize surveillance, to be able to have a wide field of surveillance to see who's doing what and what it is they're doing. But what deep surveillance entails, again, somewhat superficially in the definition, is both an examination of those explicit factors that could be contributory to the weaponization of any form of bioscience and tech, in this case neuro, as well as those implicit and tacit factors that might be contributory or that in some way might be illustrative of ongoing programs and/or directions and trajectories for the possible weaponization of these tools and technologies. Now, that level of deep surveillance, obviously, as we alluded to not only in that paper, the Battlescape Brain paper, but in a subsequent paper that looked at radical leveling and emerging technologies, also in HDIC Currents, examined the idea of what that type of surveillance and its informational transfer and ultimately actionability would obtain and entail. And one of the things that we argued for very strongly is at very least what is necessary is a whole of government approach, a cooperative, collaborative whole of government approach. But although that is necessary, we argued that that is not sufficient. Working with my colleague, former Navy Captain Rick Bremseth, again, Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Snow, Dr. Diane DeUlis, Joe.
What if I told you that your consciousness can transcend space and time, escape the physical matrix, tap into the one true consciousness behind the universal hologram, that you can even leave your physical body? Well, if it were just me saying this, I would absolutely say, don't believe me. But the fact of the matter is, it is not just me. These statements are the product of decades of research by the military and intelligence agencies, and they are all spelled out explicitly in the now declassified analysis and assessment of the gateway process. Now, if you're just hearing this for the first time, I'm sure you, like me honestly, are thinking to yourself, this cannot be true. But it is. Or at least it seems to be. And to be completely honest with you, I am way past the point of initial doubt, not just because I've done so much research on this at this point, but because I myself, as some of you know, did attend a gateway retreat at Monroe Institute just a few months ago. And yes, it was profound. Yes, I did leave my body. Yes, that is just as reality quaking as it sounds. Full story and a lot more background on all of this in this video. But back to the document itself, what does it really say? How is it really possible? What is the point of this thing? Well, those questions and many more will be answered in this very read-through, my friends. If this is your first exposure to the document, this thing is pretty dense. It approaches all of these topics, again, consciousness, transcending space and time, leaving the body, etc., from a number of angles, from the practical and theoretical to the scientific and technical. But before we crack this thing open, just a little bit of background. Why would these agencies, the military, the intelligence agencies, be interested in this topic? Why would they do this research? Well, there is, in fact, an incredibly rich multi-decades-long history behind those questions, but for the purposes of this transmission, I'm going to keep it brief. The fact of the matter is, this paper is not just some esoteric one-off. It's part of a much broader effort during the Cold War to investigate consciousness, remote viewing, psychic spying, ESP, enhanced learning, and psi phenomena in general. And if you want to know more about the history, if that just served to pique up your curiosity, I totally understand. Again, I plug this video. And also look into Robert Monroe, his books, and Project Stargate, just for starters. So with that, what do these agencies find? And does this gateway process document really hold the keys to the hidden abilities of human consciousness? Does it really allow us to peer behind the curtain of the Matrix? Well, my friends, let's find out. I bet the involvement of dive into what I think is this kind of introductory point. I think this is really important to establish out of the gate. I mean, there's so much of consciousness that cannot be expressed, as he's saying, simply through the left brain, simply through data and scientific materialistic terminology. I mean, consciousness itself is a holistic, subjective experience, and it does get inherently philosophical and spiritual, I think, when you wade into this territory. And I think he does a good job throughout the paper, from what I remember, of towing that line and respecting that line. For, paradoxically, having gone to such great lengths to avoid trying to render judgments based on an occult or dogmatic frame of reference, in the end I found it necessary to return, at least briefly, to the question of the impact of the gateway experience on common belief systems. I did so because although it was essential to avoid attempting to render an assessment in the context of such systems, I felt that it was necessary after having completed the analysis to point out that the resulting conclusions do not do any violence to the fundamental mainstream of either.
Gert has been relatively quiet recent and so just expecting to happen. Well, protect yourself and your family. So let's get straight into the paper that Gert was talking about. It's a preprint. That's the first thing, just in case anybody's fussing. On the 18th, is going to the sewage treatment centers. Really completely flawed. Not the research, not the data, just what it is that they thought at the time. And you can see here from the abstract here. So again, they're looking at the wastewater in the United States during the 2023 to 24 season using waste.
Well, that midnight Biden see you, sir. Welcome to the show. Across the country, I mean, people like Ken Paxton of Texas. You've got Todd Rokita of the state of Indiana.
Andrew Pitt,
and Ashley Moody became a United States Senator in the obviously not going to want to get answers. They're not going to want to get to the bottom of this, obviously.
So just on South Carolina's side, what your
administration that was hostile to transparency and what was done by Dr. Fauci and others like him, those malign actors, as we described in the to let
can be prosecuted
in the states and possibly more who are willing to allow the federal government, the U.S. Congress, the Trump administration.
I need you to stop focusing in on your I can'ts. I need you to start focusing on your I can'ts.
Well, I don't think
the answer is yes.
The whole galactic supercluster is like one big neuron or something.
And I would tell you,
trigger it.
Oh, I think we're gonna trigger it.
Well, that's very scary.
I think that's the trigger.
And what does that mean for Bitcoin?
Doesn't mean anything because the people that built Bitcoin up were smart enough to put 13% of the network underground where it would be protected. There's other places. I think the bigger problem for a CME is what is JP Morgan Chase going to do?
Yeah.
Because their network is really in trouble.
Yeah.
I think the bigger part for humanity to think about, I mean, we happen to be in a country right now that just came through a civil war. Do you think the people in El Salvador will be fine living off the land compared to the people in Miami? Can you imagine what Miami would look like with no supermarkets and no Total Wine?
Right.
He claims he's gonna drain the swamp.
No. Yeah. No. Okay. Economy, and so I want you to go visit the Red Cliff Prize, a big upset, and don't do what we say.
Conflicten en fraude en dat zich ondergeschikt maakte aan de mensen met
Donald Trump.
Yeah, take a deep breath and hold onto your pants. It's going to be wild.
I need some coffee for that.
Yeah, let's get you some coffee.
Thanks.
Battle, and the way you build the future is through faith. So you can't build the future through just intelligence or science. You have to build it through faith. And so you have to, as an investment banker, I'm always convinced there's a way to do this. We just haven't found it yet.
Is Trump the right person, in your opinion?
I don't know. You know, all I can tell you is Trump's in the position. Unfortunately, I think one of the reasons he's in that position is a lot of the establishment decided once you sort of beat Trump up and get sufficient control through all the lawfare that they've been doing, he's the guy who can bring in the control grid for you. So that's why I think the most important thing we need to do during the Trump administration is make sure that a digital ID and an all-digital monetary system doesn't happen.
Is he going to avoid that?
Doesn't look like it. I think it's going to be a real fight. And that's what we're watching around the globe as you look at all the politicking is tremendous competition and battles between various forms of leadership who are trying to evolve and change the model at the same time they're competing.
Haar journey begon in West Philadelphia en is na enkele conferentiebezoeken in Nederland en de nodige intimidaties en slepende rechtszaken in verband met haar werk sinds 2019 geland in een permanente residentie in Stavoren. So, Catherine, what was life about in West Philly?
We grew up on the streets. So if you've ever listened to Bill Cosby's routines, like street football, it was all about living on the streets and playing on the streets. So, TV was not